You have used pencils your entire life. You used them in school, you lost them constantly, you probably chewed on the eraser end when you were bored. You sharpened them down until they were just a tiny little stub that you could barely hold between your fingers. And at some point, without even thinking about it, you just accepted that pencils are yellow. That is just what they look like. That is just what they are. But here's the thing. Nobody ever told you why. Why yellow? Why not blue? Why not green? Why not just leave them as plain wood, which would actually make more sense since pencils are literally made of wood? The answer goes back over 100 years, and it involves a kingdom, a luxury brand, a genius marketing trick, and a decision made by one company that somehow spread across the entire world and is still affecting the pencil you pick up today. This is one of those stories where once you hear it, you will never look at a pencil the same way again. So let us start from the very beginning. Before we can talk about yellow paint, we need to talk about what is actually inside a pencil, because that is where this whole story starts. Most people think pencils are filled with lead. They are not. They never were. The gray stuff inside a pencil is called graphite. It's a form of carbon. And the reason people call it lead is just an old mistake that stuck around for centuries, which honestly says a lot about how hard it is to correct misinformation once it spreads. But that's a story for another day. Now here's the important thing about graphite. Not all graphite is the same. If you've ever used a pencil that felt scratchy and left uneven marks, that's low-quality graphite. But if you've ever used a pencil that glided across the page smoothly and left clean, dark, consistent lines, that's high-quality graphite. And for a very long time, the highest quality graphite in the entire world came from one place: China. Specifically from deposits in the Asia region that produced graphite so smooth and so pure that artists, architects, writers, and engineers all wanted it. This was premium material, the kind of graphite that serious people used for serious work. And in the 1800s, the pencil industry was built around this material. Now picture the pencil market in the late 1800s. This is a real competitive industry. You've got pencil makers all across Europe trying to outdo each other. You've got companies in Germany, Austria, France, all trying to sell their pencils to people who care about quality. And the biggest selling point you could advertise was simple. Your pencil uses the best graphite, the Asian graphite, the smooth stuff, the premium material from the Far East. But here's the problem. You can't exactly show someone graphite quality through a box. You can't make people feel how smooth your pencil is before they buy it. You need a signal. You need something visual that immediately communicates luxury and quality before the customer even opens the packaging. This is where one company changed everything. The company was called Koh-I-Noor. They were based in Austria, and they made what was considered at the time to be one of the finest pencils in the world. The name itself, Koh-I-Noor, comes from a famous diamond, one of the largest diamonds ever found, a diamond so legendary that it became a symbol of wealth and prestige across the world. So right away, this company was positioning itself as the luxury option, the premium choice, the pencil for people who took quality seriously. And when they wanted to signal that their pencils used the finest Asian graphite, they looked to Asian culture for inspiration. In Chinese culture, and across much of Asian culture at that time, yellow was not just a color. Yellow was the color of the emperor. It was reserved for royalty. It represented power, prestige, and the highest levels of society. Ordinary people did not get to wear yellow. Ordinary objects were not painted yellow. Yellow meant something. So Koh-I-Noor painted their pencils yellow. It was a deliberate, intelligent, calculated decision. The yellow color was meant to be a visual message. It was meant to say, without using a single word, that this pencil is connected to Asia. This pencil uses Asian graphite. This pencil is the premium option. The yellow was not decoration. The yellow was communication, and it worked. The Koh-I-Noor pencil became enormously popular. People loved it. Critics praised it.
Artists and writers sought it out. It became the pencil to own, the one that serious people used. And whenever something becomes that successful, you know exactly what happens next. Everyone copies it. Competitors looked at the yellow pencil and they saw the sales numbers and they thought, we need a yellow pencil too. Not because they suddenly had access to better Asian graphite, not because yellow had any real connection to their product, but simply because yellow was working. Yellow was what premium looked like now. Yellow was what people expected when they wanted a good pencil, so everybody started making yellow pencils. First, it spread across Europe, then it crossed the Atlantic. American pencil companies picked up the same habit. By the early 20th century, when pencil manufacturing was becoming a massive industrial operation in the United States, yellow was just the default. It was the standard. It was the color of pencils the same way red is the color of fire trucks or white is the color of wedding dresses. Nobody was making a conscious decision anymore. It had just become the way things were. Now here is where it gets really fascinating. At some point, the whole reason yellow was chosen in the first place became completely irrelevant. The graphite trade changed, sources shifted, companies sourced their materials from all over the world. The specific connection between yellow paint and Asian graphite disappeared entirely. But the yellow pencils kept coming. Because by then, it was not about graphite anymore. It was about familiarity. It was about expectation. It was about the fact that when you walk into a store and you see a yellow pencil, your brain immediately registers it as a real pencil, a proper pencil, the kind of pencil that works. A blue pencil looks like a novelty. A green pencil looks like a gimmick, but a yellow pencil looks like a pencil. And that feeling, that instant recognition, that sense of correctness, that is worth more than any advertisement. The original marketing message had long since been forgotten, but the marketing result was still running perfectly. This is actually one of the most powerful examples of what marketers today call brand association. The idea that you connect your product with a feeling, a color, an image, and eventually people cannot separate the two anymore. Think about how many other things work exactly this way in your life. Why is Coca-Cola red? Because in the early 20th century, they ran so many advertisements featuring that specific red that now it is impossible to think about the drink without thinking about the color. Why do we expect taxis to be yellow? Because in 1907, a man named John Hertz founded the Yellow Cab Company and chose yellow because a study told him it was the most visible color from a distance. And then enough cities adopted it that it became the mental image of a taxi. Why does a hospital feel like a hospital? Partly because of its color. Because somewhere along the way, certain colors got associated with cleanliness and calm, and those associations became locked in. Colors carry meaning, not because the meaning is built into the color itself, but because somebody, somewhere, made a decision, and then enough people followed that decision long enough that it became reality. The pencil is just the most elegant example of this because the whole thing happened so gradually, so quietly, and so completely that we all just absorbed it without ever being told. Here's something worth sitting with for a moment. The Koh-I-Noor company made that decision to paint their pencils yellow somewhere around the 1890s. That is well over 100 years ago. The people who made that decision are long gone. The original reason for the decision is long forgotten. The graphite supply chains that inspired the whole thing have completely changed. And yet, right now, today, if you walk into any school supply store, any office supply store, any corner shop that sells basic stationery, you are going to find yellow pencils. Not because anyone decided yellow pencils are best, not because there's anything special about yellow paint on a pencil, but because a smart company in Austria made one clever decision. It worked well enough that everyone copied it, and it compounded across generations until it became so normal that questioning it would feel strange. You've been buying yellow pencils your whole life. Your parents bought yellow pencils. Their parents bought yellow pencils. And at no point did any of you stop and wonder why, because yellow pencils just look right. That is the power of a single good idea that spreads at the right time. There's one more piece to this story that I love. Today, some pencil companies actually try to break away from yellow. They make pencils in all kinds of colors: bright greens, deep blues, clean white, natural wood finish. And those pencils exist, and some people buy them, and they work perfectly fine. But study after study on consumer behavior shows that when people are given a choice and they're not specifically looking for something different, they consistently reach for the yellow pencil. Not because it performs better, it does not. Not because the yellow paint does anything special, it does not. But because yellow pencils feel like real pencils. They feel like the right choice. They feel familiar in a way that goes so deep it doesn't even register as a feeling anymore. It just feels like fact. Over 100 years of repetition turned a marketing decision into a human instinct. So next time you pick up a pencil, just take 1 second to look at it. That yellow paint is carrying more history than almost any object in your home. It's a direct connection to Chinese emperors and the cultural meaning of color. It's a tribute to an Austrian company that understood the psychology of buying before psychology was even a formal field of study. It's evidence of how one smart idea can travel across continents and generations and never lose its grip. The pencil did not have to be yellow. It very easily could have been any other color. At some point in history, a small group of people made a choice, and that choice quietly shaped the way billions of people see an everyday object forever. History is full of moments like this, huge, lasting, world-shaping decisions hiding inside the most ordinary things. You just have to know where to look.